Live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of the Property Expert Podcast and Live at 5, where Ben and myself will be bringing you all the highs and lows, business tips and tricks that we put into play in our businesses during the week. If this is the first time you're joining us, we run a multitude of 6, 7 and 8 figure businesses, and we've got a jam-packed episode for you today. For podcast listeners, it's the 19th of April. And starting off the agenda, we're talking about contractor progress meetings and how they are structured. So if you've got any jobs where you're meeting contractors on site, how to structure those. By an internal request in our team, I've been asked to talk about arbitrage and what arbitrage is. And I'll be delving into how we actually do arbitrage in our property company. But it's actually more retail stuff, so selling products and what side hustle could you be working on. The importance of early kitchen designs. We'll be sharing our site in Thame and what we're doing there. Selling agents. Now, if anyone's struggling to sell anything, hang around for our point 4, which is selling agents, because we'll be discussing that in more detail. Point 5, our site tour day is really fast approaching. So if you're not booked on, I think we're almost full. So be proactive and get yourselves booked on. Point 6, I'll be sharing what I got up to last Sunday with property people and mountain biking. 7, a sneak peek into a finished Aura project, which Ben will be sharing. I think he did some filming this week, so he'll be sharing a little bit about our project that Aura are working on. Point 8, St Andrew's Court external works. Have we achieved planning approval on that? And I'm sure Ben will go into detail about how that scheme is a bit of a chess game, to say the least. And then last but not least, the cost of not investing. So we've got some, I suppose, questions to ask yourself around investments that you're looking at making and what would be the case if you weren't to invest. But a jam-packed episode, and we're looking forward to hopefully getting some more questions in that we potentially can't answer. I actually Googled the question, Ben, last week, and I still didn't make head or tail. I think it might have been the terminology.
I do have an apology to make. Yeah, I haven't prepped for the burning question that somebody had last week that I couldn't answer live on air. So I will get to that next week, but apologies for that. Should we kick on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. So we've got 5 projects in progress at the moment. We're due to deliver about 65 plus units over the next 12 to 15 months, about £25 million worth of GDV, which is no mean feat and keeping us super busy. But one of the things that happened this week was our first progress meeting with our contractor on site in the old Maltings in Abingdon. Company called Grove Construction. Been super impressed with, we're super impressed with them through the tender process. But now that they've set up on site, even more impressed really with their management. I've actually never seen, I guess because it's a bigger scheme than what we're used to, and the type of contractor that they are is much more than maybe your sort of gang of builders that does some smaller projects. But they've got their site offices set up. Health and safety is down to a T. There's lots of red tape to even get on the site now, which is a good thing in one way. And on sites the size of this, you would kind of expect it, but super impressed with their outfit. And this Monday was our first progress meeting, and I just wanted to run through some of the key things that we discuss at those progress meetings. It's a formal progress meeting. It's not just necessarily a chat on site with the builder. The contracts manager was there, the architect was there, the engineer was there. All of the site project management team were there from the contractors. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to kind of get everyone on the same page, driving the project forward in the right direction. And I thought I'd go through a list of the agenda items in our progress meeting agenda. So with all formal meetings like this, it's always good to have a formal agenda. What's that saying that people use? No agenda, no attender. I think that's the saying. Some people don't attend any meetings until they've seen an agenda, so they know exactly what to prepare for when they turn up. So agenda and meeting minutes are key to distribute around. And I guess that leads on to point number 2, which is an attendees and apologies kind of list. So who's in attendance, what company are they from, what's their role, what's their name, and then the distribution of who those meeting minutes should go to, i.e. people that couldn't be there, maybe a MEP consultants or other people from the construction team or other people from XP Property. Jack is on our apologies list. He doesn't need to be there on site because that's myself and Tom's part of the business, but Jack will be on the distribution list to keep him up to date on all the things that are going on site. Number 3, then we move on to contractor progress updates. This is just a general update of where the contractors are. In this case, it was site setup is complete, enabling work started. And just anything else that happened in between kind of starting site and this progress update. 4, anything to do with contract matters. So looking at the program, are we on program? Are we ahead of program? Are we behind program? And what can we do about it? Valuations, when are they? How often? Who's going to be doing them? Who's going to be signing them off, etc. Number 5, health and safety and CDM stuff. So are there any risk assessments or method statements, RAMs, that are required to get going on site? What are the scaffold and access requirements? How do they impact everything? And what do we need to do from a developer perspective to get other landowners on board if we're oversailing, or all those key things that need to be discussed? Any accidents and incidents, obviously, hopefully you're not talking about those, but they do happen, and recording them is key. You've got a legal obligation, or the contractor has a legal obligation on site to kind of keep everyone free of accidents and keep the site nice and clean and tidy. And then on to design matters. So all of your consultants need to be involved in that, your architect, your structural engineer, the mechanical and electrical consultants. And are there any planning and building regulation things that the contractor needs to be aware of that we as the developer need to bring up? So, for example, we've instructed Grove Construction to deliver 21 units as part of the conversion of the old Maltings, but one of those units actually doesn't have planning approval yet, so it's in abeyance. They're not going to start works on that 21st unit until we have the planning approval in place. So keeping them up to date with how that's going is key. And actually the update on that is that we submitted planning approval. We submitted the planning application last week. So yeah, all of those things are key to maintain the program and give them any heads ups into what's going to be happening in the future with the wider site. So we will be, that planning application that we put in last week was for 2 extra houses in the car park. So again, that's something key that Grove need to be aware of. And actually we, off the back of that, future planned for some of the future plumbing works or drainage works below ground that need to be brought forward in the program to allow for the future potential of those 2 new build houses without disrupting the rest of the works that they need to do. So yeah, all of these design matters are key to discuss in these progress meetings and bring everyone up to speed and on the same page. And then any other business, so it could really be anything. But I thought that was hopefully useful for some people, just to see how we plan out our progress meetings and have formal meeting minutes and list of things to discuss with the contractors to keep everything moving in the right direction.
I've got a question, Ben, before we move on from that. Yep. So for our listeners out here, if you're anything like XP or Central Suites, your contract value might not actually warrant progress meetings of this altitude. You might not need to have weekly or monthly progress meetings this detailed. So I suppose the question is for, you could split it out for new build or conversion contract value, but in my opinion, it's probably of the same sort of threshold. But at what sort of value of a contract would you expect this to be a necessity?
I think probably like £1 million plus contract. You're going to want to have something a bit more formal in place. If you're breaching from maybe a small works JCT contract to an intermediate, for example, as soon as you get into that intermediate levels, which actually is probably above 250 grand, but I would say £1 million, you're going to start having this type of progress meeting. And it actually does depend a lot on your contractor themselves. Like if they've got the high levels of management that Grove have, they're going to want to have those meetings because there's so many people involved in the process that it needs to be formally structured. Otherwise it's the Wild West. When you've got a smaller contract and a gang of builders, typically you're probably dealing with the head foreman or the owner of the business. All the communication goes through them and they just disseminate and discuss all of the relevant changes with their team. So you're really only dealing with one person and then they feed it down to the relevant people. But once you start getting into the levels of contract that this is, which is just under £1.7 million contract, it's really necessary.
Good. I think that's answered my question.
Good. Taylor Brown, thanks for tuning in at the gym. When quickly playing with floor plans, what is a good software you would recommend? I live on Bluebeam Review. It's a PDF editing software that allows you to sketch and cut and copy and mark up and scale. And, so if you've got a right move floor plan, for example, and you throw it into Bluebeam, there's so much you can do to sort of cut and paste and play around with the layouts. It's not specifically for that. And there are things like SketchUp, like you mentioned, which can be a good tool to play with layouts. But I mean, fundamentally, it depends what type of project you're working on. Realistically, you should get an architect on board. You can play around with layouts all you want, but getting an expert in there to really maximize the space and push the boundaries and also know what's compliant is key. So really does depend on the size of the project. If it's a HMO that's a 4 or 5 bed HMO, you might just want to play around with yourself and then hand it over to an architect. But if you really want to make the most out of space, you should really be getting in a specialist. Cool. Arbitrage. Here we go, Christina. Just for you.
Yeah, I don't even know why this spurred into her mind to get me to talk about arbitrage. But for listeners out there that haven't followed me on my potential Instagram profile, my real sort of background and life is trading and sales. So, finding items and selling them on. I did a little teaser post today of this toilet that you can see on the screen if you're watching live. But for podcast listeners, it's essentially an events toilet. And I, believe it or not, before I was of the age that you could have a national insurance card, I was working for a toilet hire company for cash. And very early years, and probably on something like £10 a day. And actually, I can remember my boss used to have a rule that if we used to sometimes gamble my day pay. So for example, if I got a certain amount of toilets done by a certain amount of time, he would double my day rate, which was peanuts to him, but a lot to me. But anyway, what you can see was an example of what we call arbitrage, or arbitrage in retail. So that is taking something from a low value in market. That could be, this particular toilet was bought in an auction, and that was a liquidator's auction. So it's a company that's gone bust. They've got a fleet of kit. The liquidators need to get rid of it quickly to pay back the stakeholders. So they put it into a liquidator's auction. It's not going to fetch the best value. I then bought it in an auction for £4,000, put it on my eBay account and sold it within a week to probably one of their competitors for £8,000. Now, my value creation is putting in the time and effort to find it at that value and trade it back out in the market at higher value. And that is principally what arbitrage is. And it doesn't have to be £4,000, £5,000 things. It could be of any value. We've now translated this into our property life, and we've arbitraged actual houses. Which means we find something that we think is devalued or badly marketed. That's the really key one. If something's really badly marketed or undervalued, if you can get in and get it agreed for that value, whether it's a toilet or a house, and then find a better place of market, draw up some CGIs, clear the site, make it look more attractive and market it really well, that arbitrage in value can be astronomically strong in real estate. So to give you another example of a product, you can see a geodesic dome on the screen, which is basically one of those domes that they put in pub gardens over COVID, when you obviously couldn't be in close proximity with people that you weren't in your bubble. Quite coincidentally, they look like a bubble. But anyway, I started to see these cropping up everywhere during the COVID period. And I knew that their price inflation would go up. And I knew that it would be a case of who can hold stock. So another value of arbitrage is access to stock, and then access to market. And in this particular instance, I arbitraged value by finding a supplier of these domes, which coincidentally ended up being almost like a garden centre, a national garden centre that had really good online presence, but not good enough to be on page 1 of Google. So what I then did is, you can actually see my job advert in the bottom left here, where I've got a Union Jack, main UK distributor plus warranty on the main screen. people could go onto Google, search for dome or garden dome or pub dome or table dome in Google. And what I was doing was I was selling the product that was on page 6, 7, or 8 of Google. But because eBay has such a good SEO and PPC expenditure, my eBay account would actually push that onto page 1 of Google. So I'm arbitraging that marketing, taking it from a place where people need to trawl to page 7 or 8, all the way back to the original page of Google. Now, if you look at the stats, I can't remember them exactly, but so don't hold me to it. But I think it's something like 60% of people will buy off page 1 of Google and not go on to page 2. And then a further 40% of that 60%. So these ratios are reducing down. So your purchasing market is reducing down, would then not go on to page 3. So I was buying these geodesic domes for about £650 to £700 and then reselling them on for about £1,200, £1,300 back on eBay. Once a sale had gone through, I was technically doing what got coined drop shipping. I was then making the order with the supplier on page 7 with a gift receipt to the person that had bought it and trading it out for a few £100 more than I was buying them for. There's a little screenshot there that you can see with some actual numbers of a sale. So the reason that that's in there is because that's actually my eBay account. So it says delivered on the 28th of October 2020. So just in the sort of 6-month period after COVID had hit. I bought 2 domes for £1,350. I sold them for £2,576. That's £1,226 profit. I didn't even see the product. I bought it off the page and sent it on, and it was probably 10 minutes work. You're probably thinking you might need customer care. You might need to send a new one if it's broken. All you do is play middleman with the supplier and the buyer to then offload that responsibility. So there is opportunity out there to create arbitrage in value in items. I think they really need to be selling for over £500. Otherwise, you're doing the same amount of work for something. If you were selling, for an example, I did sell a lot of, you can actually see it on the bottom right there, mobile phone chargers. I was selling those. I probably shipped about 400 transactions in mobile phone chargers. And what you realize is the amount of aggro to get that transaction to happen is exactly the same as one dome, which could make me £400 or £500. So you quickly analyze that over £500 is sort of, in my opinion, the market you want to be in. It's as simple as having a reputable eBay account, or even if you want to operate on Amazon, and you essentially find stuff that's cheaper and sell it for a higher margin on a better marketing platform. And that's essentially arbitrage. So to use 2 examples, I believe it was probably similar sort of year in 2020, Ben and I, we got 2 houses under contract. Both were with the same agent, really badly marketed. They're in dilapidated conditions, so they weren't for everyone to buy it. So the people that did manage to find the listing weren't very interested in them. We agreed a contract on one of them at £300,000. And we ended up, it was actually £330,000, and we ended up selling it for £475 in an auction without even completing it. And that is called a back-to-back or a sub-sell in legals. So it just goes to show we made best part over 100 grand, including fees, that you can do this type of thing by finding something in a low market and trading in a high market. Obviously, a property is bigger numbers, so it's bigger return, bigger risk, I suppose, depending on your sort of ability to facilitate that sort of money, because we did have to exchange, we did have to get the legals in place. We actually took down some trees on site to clear it out. We pulled together a design plan, submitted planning, put in CGIs, and then sold it. So there's a bit more work that goes into it. But from my post on Instagram earlier today, it was sort of putting it out there to make us, our listeners or anyone that follows us, is there anything that you've got really good knowledge of in the market that you don't have to do research on, that you could think of finding somewhere cheap to sell it high? And can you be making a side hustle on that? I mean, the classic and most relatable story, and it kills me to hear pretty much every entrepreneur, how did you start out? Oh, I sold sweets at school. Believe it or not, I did as well. And the way that I did that was just, my mum would go to Costco once a month. I would go with her, buy chocolate bars for £10p a piece, sell them for 40p a piece. And that is pretty much it, but just on a very different scale. And what you're doing there is you're allowing the convenience for someone that doesn't want to go on to page 2 of Google, someone that doesn't want to drive to Costco to get cheap sweets cheaper, someone that doesn't want to monitor auctions to buy stock cheaper. And it's adding that convenience value that you're really capitalizing on. So do you have any, you could be into cars, you could be into, you could be into retail, you could be into foods, you could be into all sorts, but whatever is your thing, and you don't think you necessarily need to skill up, that might be something that you could look at understanding the value of the market and seeing if you could arbitrage some value there. I will caveat that out with, if it is a side hustle, you do have to declare it if you're making a certain threshold. I think it's $3,000 a year to the tax man. And that's seen as more of a professional endeavor. But yeah, just generally a bit of a blast from the past. And, still doing it now, but with real estate.
Nice. I mean, it's the essence of entrepreneurship, isn't it? It's finding value and trading it for profit. That's
it's super simple. And also, when I put up that post that you can see in front of your screen that I made 1,200 quid in 10 minutes, people didn't actually believe it happened because they don't believe that it's true. But I mean, that's a screenshot from my phone on my eBay account, so I can't really fudge that. And it is available out there. I actually have another story. There was a charity auction in Henley-on-Thames called Sue Ryder. It's shut now, but it was a big care home, and it's where everything, there would literally probably be 1,000 new items every time that it was on. It was on every other week. And I would go there and pick up a Hugo Boss suit that's, tired, dusty, get it dry cleaned, sell it for 250 quid on eBay. And I picked it up for 50p. So you can seriously find these things and make margins on them. Just think about where your knowledge is.
Nice. Very good. Cool. On to point number 3, the importance of early kitchen design. And I bring this up because we've come unstuck over the last couple of days to a certain degree. There's reasons for it, but it just highlighted the importance of getting a sort of nailed on kitchen design really early in your process. I think it's very easy to think, well, kitchen's one of the last things that will go in on your refurbishment or your development or whatever you're doing. But in reality, behind that kitchen is waste pipes. There are fused spurs for your fridge freezers. There's dishwasher and washing machine potentially drainage that needs to be put in. And following some conversations with our sales consultant and sort of internal discussions, over the last couple of weeks, we've actually redesigned the kitchens in our top floor flats in St Andrew's Court. And this is an image for those that are watching on YouTube on the right hand side. It's plaster's drying out, but under this mezzanine deck is where the kitchen was going to go. And you can kind of see these 2 pipes coming out of the wall. Can you see my cursor? Yeah. 2 pipes coming out of the wall. That's for my sink. But if you look at the CGI of the kitchen, the sink's now over here. So same with the fuse spur. There's a fuse spur for the fridge freezer on this left-hand side, but our fridge freezer now is on the right-hand side as you enter in the door. So all of this work that the contractor's done, because ultimately the first fix electrics and the first fix plumbing is months before the installation of the kitchens in terms of the program of works. So if you've not got those in the right place, we're now going to have to spend the best, probably potentially a couple of grand kind of in the 3 flats, rearranging all of this first fix, because we've decided late in the day that we want to redo our kitchen layout. Now, the kitchen layout that we now have got, I'm way happier with it. And I'm, after going through the process with Howdens, looking at the sales market, speaking to our agents and sales consultants, I really like the way that this is laid out, and I think it will add value to the flat. But we have cost ourselves some money by making that late change, because the first fix electrics and plumbing are in the wrong place at the moment. So yeah, it just shows the importance of being thoughtful about that whole process, making sure that if you do want to make some changes, you make them early enough that they can be captured within this first fix phase. You're an estate agent.
Yeah, American one. So I wanted to share this and also a bit of a question for our listeners out there, really. I mean, Ben and I were talking about Princess Risborough Sunset Court, our property. I've also got a little cottage for sale in Henley, which is a little bit sticky at the moment too. And I just kind of have this urge that I need to try something different. You know, the only two, I was always told by a very good estate agent, the only two things that you can ever change with a property that you're selling is the marketing or the price. If you've got the marketing right, the price needs to change. If you've got the price right, the marketing needs to change. And sometimes, being who we are, our profits in selling units, we were reluctant to change the price. So sometimes we get this urge to try something different. On Princess Riswell, we're now dual agent, where you have two agents working alongside each other, and that might be on a fee that they're sharing, or winner takes all, or even weighted, a lion share they call it, where it's weighted towards the one that actually gets the transaction, but the other one still gets some, a smaller fee to cover their costs. Or you can obviously be sole agent, which is what I am on in my cottage. And I was having a chat with the agent, and I'm just of the view that I just want to reshape, try something new, which basically means go with a new agent. And he was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, saying that every single person in the UK that buys a house finds it on Zoopla or Rightmove. And I'm not sure if I agree with that. And I've had experience on selling houses before. The very first project I did, which was a project near Reading called Four Winds, where we built a £900,000 house. It was on with an agent that had good marketing. We thought the price was right. He had done tons of viewings, and it took about 6 months for us to realize that we wanted to jump ship. We changed it to list it with Romans, and they sold it within a month. And you could argue that could be luck. You could argue that everyone's on Rightmove. You could argue they've got a database. We actually don't know the detail. But the fundamentals are, sometimes you just get the urge to just try something new because the existing isn't working. So, I mean, a general conversation to put it out there, what people are seeing in the market, whether there's any actual estate agents that follow us that do believe that changing agent is a good idea or a bad idea. But agents being salespeople, they back themselves. The agent that I was speaking to gave me a lot of data. He told me how many viewings we've had. He told me that out of all those 30 viewings, there must be an offer in there somewhere, but the price isn't right. It's a difficult one. Ben, what's your views?
I think the market at the moment is super tough. Again, I'd love to know what the listeners are finding at the moment. From what I've been told and what I'm kind of seeing our side, January this year, things did start to pick up. Like Q4 last year was dead. It was really, really tough, and it still is a tough market. But it seems to be, I'm seeing more emails come through with viewing appointments and interest in certainly Sunset Court. But I think from an agent perspective, I don't know, because there will be downturns in the market where it is just the market, just people aren't buying, people are sitting on their hands, they're not doing anything. So whether you change agents or not, I don't know how much of an impact it will have, or whether it's just riding it out is also a good thing to do. But when we did bring in the dual agency, it did bring in a new buzz. We had significantly more viewings. Having two sets of agents on Rightmove with two sets of different photos and copy, and some adverts might appeal more to others with one agent than the other agent, and that did seem to give a bit of a spurt in terms of new viewings. But I don't know. I just think potentially sometimes when the market is difficult, like you say, if a buyer does come along, there's probably an element of luck in that, or it's circumstance, and it just happened to be right time, right person. But I don't know.
I suppose my real question is it just Rightmove? If your marketing is good, if your photos and your blurb and your brochure are good, is it worth going with another agent? We've had experiences, for an example, on our property we're selling in Chinner. We had tons of viewings, 0 offers, and it was the agent that there was the issue, because we said we're jumping ship, and all of a sudden 3 offers came out of the air. And we said, well, you're doing your job, you're creating a deal. But on this instance, I don't know if we're quite there, because I've served notice and nothing's transpired out of it. He's just saying, I can't produce anything for you. They say that auctions are the barometer of the property market. I can see that, how much stock is trading in the market, but we're talking about consumers here, so it's very different. I was actually, while I was in the shop getting my lunch today, bumped into a local young entrepreneur who runs a removals company, and he said he's been super quiet for the last 4 months, and I've never heard him say that. And he's at the point where they've bought the house and they're moving. So he's on the lower end of the barometer, like, then a survey, then an architectural work. We sort of see that later stage, but I kind of feel like you're really on the coal face. You just put it on the market and hope you sleep at night.
I think it's with our Moswell Hill project, one of the agents that we've been speaking to about taking that project on does not put her properties on Rightmove or any online portals. So it absolutely can work, and she's built her reputation with her network and database that she goes to, and it's very niche because fundamentally all she focuses on is Northwest London and the areas that we're in, North London. And it's taken a long time to build that reputation for her. So it absolutely can work where she literally doesn't put anything on Rightmove. It's just all through her individual channels. So yeah, it can work, but I think you've got to build a very good reputation and niche for yourself to be able to do that. Because when I've bought a property, main residence in the past, I go to Rightmove. That's my first port of call. And I do think 90% of people probably do that if they're looking for a property that they want to live in. It might be slightly different for investment or investment buyers, but I think if you're main resi, you're just going to go to one of those portals, whichever one you like the most.
Yeah, Thomas Oliver has actually said,
I've gone dual agent, changed the price, and my original agent has got me an offer. I think it's a bit of luck at the moment in this market. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of happened with some, like we've definitely seen when you wave or poke the stick of we're gonna go dual agency, like Jack said, it does tend to kick the original agent up the bum a little bit and does incentivize them more, where they're dealing with 200 sales in their particular office. Yours is one of those. If you do have to keep on top of them. And if you listen to, I think it was either last week or the week before, we have taken on an external sales consultant to help us with that sales process in St Andrew's Court, whereby they are your outsourced in-house sales consultant to make sure that the agents are doing what they should be doing, pushing things forward, driving the sales forward. Because actually our in-house resource is limited, and we're busy focused on actually delivering X number of units. And there does need to be someone pushing the agents forward. We can't really leave it to their own devices, because I do think they'll just get lackadaisical.
Completely agree. That was it. It was more of an open topic, but useful, I think, nonetheless.
Thanks for the comments coming in. If you aren't signed up, we, I think, have about 35 people on the list. We may have to shut that off at 40. One, because I think actually some of our contractors might get quite annoyed if there's 40 people working around on an active site, which both the Old Maltings and St Andrew's Court is. We're going to be heading to Marlow. So the site tour starts from 12 o'clock next Friday, the 26th. We're going to be finishing off around probably about 5 o'clock. We're going to go to Marlow, which is an 8-unit scheme. We are going to Thame, which is the first phase of 9 units and a future phase of 20 units. And then over to the Old Maltings, which will end up being 21 flats and two houses. If you joined us last, this one, yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yeah,
good. If you joined us in some of our previous ones, I'm actually rolling a videotape that sounds so old, doesn't it? Rolling the video of one of our previous ones, which we did on Princess Risborough Sunset Court. Very cold day that day. It was snowing and the darkness of winter. But yeah, lots of people came to that. We had one in the summer just showing the finished product. And this is our most recent one. We're going to try and do 2 of these a year. If you're interested in coming to this, you can head over to our website, xpproperty.co.uk. There is a blog page on there with all of the details and sign up information for next Friday's 26th of April's site tour day. So do get in touch if you want to come along.
something a bit different. So last Sunday, I ventured down to Swinley Forest, which is based just outside of Bracknell, because Rose Sharma had organised a property mountain biking Sunday. This is just a call out to if anyone out there of our listeners likes mountain biking. There's a bit of downhill, there's a bit of trails. I mean, when I say a bit downhill, there's some serious jumps, 10-foot jumps if you really, really fancy sailing over those. But reach out if you would like to attend. We're getting 2 dates together in May. And if you contact me, just comment mountain biking. I'll reach out to see if you can come along. But just as a bit of substance, we met there at 8 a.m. and we cycled around until about midday. I think we covered about 20 miles. But on a mountain bike, that's not bad going. And then we stopped for lunch and chit chat. Guess what we were talking about all the way around it was quite funny because there were some people on the hills that couldn't continue conversations about finance leverage and some that could continue conversations going uphill about those types of things. But
didn't
you
tell me you were the youngest in the group and you're the only one with an electric bike?
I was actually one of 2. And I believe he was probably the second youngest.
Nice.
But yeah, it was comical. So it was really good fun, really good rides out in Swinley. All you got to do is pay for your parking and your lunch. It's not a ticketed thing. So if anyone has got a full suspension mountain bike and fancies throwing it around for a few hours and catching up with some like-minded property. So we had property developers, we had property investors, we had a lender there, we had a builder there, we had a compliance and software guy. We had pretty much everything that you could imagine under the sun. So it was good. I think there was 10 of us that went. So we're looking to make it a little bit bigger, not too big. Otherwise, I don't think Swinley Forest would like it. It'll be a bit like our contractors on our site day. But just a little shout out to thank Ro. And if anyone else would like to come on, it's an open invite.
Nice.
Are you coming along, Ben?
I don't have a bike currently.
I should have said actually. There's a bike store where you can rent bikes there.
Okay,
So
nice.
you can just turn up with your clothes and your helmet and rent a bike. Yeah,
I wouldn't mind a bit of that, to be fair. Yeah, a bit of fresh air. Good stuff. So just a reminder, if you're listening in on the podcast, thanks very much. We're on Spotify, Apple, all of your standard podcast platforms. If you do want to see some of the things that we're discussing, do make sure you subscribe on YouTube. I do think, given that it's property and it's very visual, it's a great place to kind of see some of the things that we're talking about and get a sense of the size and scale of some of the developments that we're working on. And we'd love you to rate us on Spotify and also leave a review on Apple to share the wealth. This is hopefully giving a lot of value to those budding developers and investors and business owners that want to kind of grow vicariously through us and also learn from our mistakes. So please do share it with at least one person and leave a review and rate us on those platforms. Thanks very much. On to point number 7, which is I had a sort of 3-hour filming day at one of Aura's finished projects in southwest London. It's this one on screen. I've circled in red a mid-construction video that we did of this, so you can see this project coming to life. This is the before photo, and for those people on the podcast, it's a beautiful kind of 1930s. It's got kind of wooden shutters on the front elevation, a bit of wisteria. It's right next to sort of Tooting Bec Common in southwest London. It is a beautiful period property. We've added a really significantly modern, contemporary kind of ground floor extension. Got planning approval for big zinc-clad roof dormers as well, and the client has now finished the first phase of works, which is the ground floor rear extension and internal remodeling. These are the professional photos that came in hot off the press today, and I did want to quickly show also some of the internal shots, which are looking absolutely incredible. The kitchen was from Roundhouse, really kind of bespoke finishes, had all the mod cons. Some amazing LED lighting in these uplighters, corner glazing, Oriel windows, massive roof lights. Super excited to share the full video with you guys over on YouTube. And luckily, because a lot of our clients don't want to know, but the client herself was in the house. She didn't seem as camera shy as most people, and she did actually do a really good 10-minute video sort of interview, talking us through exactly what they love about the project, how it went, and it's great to get that kind of client feedback and testimonial. So I was super happy that they were willing to do that. So yeah, head over to Homes by Aura to view that video when it comes out shortly. And some other great news, spoiler alert in the title, but we have today achieved planning approval for all of the external works that we wanted to achieve at St Andrew's Court in Thame. So for those that haven't heard about this project before, this is the 17,000 square foot office conversion that we're converting into 20 flats. We're retaining about 4,500 square foot of commercial space. We've got 2 tenants which are currently in situ on the site that are relocating. We're re-gearing their leases, putting them both onto about a 15-year lease, which is great. That will value up the space really, really well for us. And then the rest of the office space we're converting to 20 flats. And the external works package, which is what you see in the CGI, includes these external balconies at first floor level, some recessed terraces at loft level, and then some gardens in the background here, which you can see sort of courtyard gardens for the ground floor flats in some of the building. Massive amounts of added value with that. People want external amenity space when you're so close to the town centre, which is exactly what this project is. Having some private amenity as well is just the icing on the cake and really going to help sell these units at top dollar, hopefully. So we've now got some work to do to get this priced up, add the balconies, the gardens, and the recessed terraces for phase 1, which is the 9 units that we're halfway through, and get the contractor doing that as soon as we possibly can, so that when we start selling these, which is only a couple of months away, we've actually got this private amenity to really sort of showcase the flats to the best of their ability. Anything you want to say on that, Jack?
No. Well, it's actually the second planning application. We also had one down in Croydon as well this week.
We did, very true. A long-awaited planning application that is 13 months old, and unlocks the refinance of the asset for us, which is long overdue. And yeah, you're right. That I've, to be honest, probably more relieved about that one than I was about this one, because this one was we knew it was coming, and we had good feedback from the planning authority on this one, so it was kind of nailed on. Actually, we had another planning approval from Croydon today, which was for Selsdon Road. It was probably the quickest planning approval I've ever had. It was a non-material amendment that I think went in 2 weeks ago and was approved today. So yeah, Gabby sent that, and I couldn't quite believe we'd got it approved. But I mean, it was for very minor work. It was basically asking to keep an existing window situation as opposed to changing it, which the original planning approval said we would do. But still, yeah, 3 planning approvals to move things along this week. So happy days. Cool. Over to you. The cost of not investing.
Yeah. So I was on a call with a mentee earlier this week. And I obviously won't say who he is, but he long and short, he's a successful business owner, and his business is occupying a lot of his time. And where this conversation came about of the cost of not investing, and the example, if you can see this is actually the house that I referred to, that we arbitraged the value where we got into the site and traded it back out. And I'll come on to a little bit more about the project later. But the conversation with my mentee goes as such: he wanted to co-invest or invest with a development business because his business is too demanding and sort of earn and learn, I suppose, while on the job with another developer. But he believes that he wants to be dialing down his time in his business within about 12 months to be doing his own developments, which is why we're working with him to assist him to get onto his journey, I suppose. And we were I sort of relayed that it doesn't necessarily have to be equity that he's investing. He might want to invest in debt, and he might be able to find a deal quicker. And I was sort of portraying that is a better way to not invest. You may find if you've got a pot of capital and you're looking to invest it in equity in a deal, and you're looking for a specific deal, your money might be sat around for a very long time until that deal arrives. It might take 5 months to buy it. It might then take a year to get planning. It might then take 9 months to deliver, and then it might take 6 months to sell. So what is really key is also assessing not just the risk, not just the profit, not just the time frames, not just who you're lending to or what the project is, but also your agenda and getting capital into deals quicker on a lower return or a first charge might actually prove a better return than equity stuff. That's it is very equity stuff is very project led, and it always has to be the right deal for you to invest. Now, the reason that we have this example in front of us is because we were capital raising for this site. This is all done now, so we're not capital raising now. When we were capital raising for the site, and we got the exchange sorted on the site, our exits were either trade it out in the market or deliver the scheme that you can see on the right hand side to make a profit. And we had one particular investor who wasn't comfortable with the amount of return that they would be receiving. So I'm talking about the quantity of a return back on their capital. And I can't remember exactly, but it was sort of mid-teens, maybe high teens return on their cash. And this project was going to be within a year. And coincidentally, we took the site on. We actually traded it out, and we coincidentally started speaking to that investor again because we had another project live. And my question to them is, well, what did you invest your capital in? And the answer was nothing. So the reason that I put this in here and I talked through my mentee about this scenario is obviously you have to understand every deal and every risk and every developer and whatever it presents. But sometimes going a little bit outside your sort of buy box or what you normally do might be more beneficial if you think of it on the grand scheme of things and timeframes, because deals do take a while, especially development deals, to secure and get to the point of investing. If you're an equity investor, you might have a 6-month period or a 2-year period between a deal finishing and your next deal starting. Whereas debt positions are a lot quicker and easier. When I mean debt, is like you're essentially being a bank for someone. So you might be a bridging lender or a development lender, or even supporting them for higher up in the capital stack. But the main sort of principle in here is, the biggest risk is sometimes not taking risk, and not investing is sometimes worse than investing in a semi-bad return. But at least it's something and it's progressing, and you might be able to get some experience under your belt as a result of that. So I just think not a lot of people talk about that in our industry. Everyone wants the 35% return on GDV and the £1 million deals. But when you're looking at annualized return and compounding value, that really needs to be acknowledged from an individual perspective. And we talked about this at length with my mentee, and I just think it's good to sometimes think about things from another perspective, because I would rather do 2 more boring vanilla deals with 15% return on cash consecutively over a year than wait for that 30% return on cash, which may take time. So just to sort of, I suppose, make you think, are you thinking about the speed that you're getting the money out the door? Because if it's sat still doing nothing, it's technically eroding. And we've actually got a SaaS investor who works with us. And because his SaaS is his pension, and if his pension isn't invested, he says, I need to get this out the door. And it's a very different mentality to a lot of the equity investors that we work with. It's almost like, that they don't want to let anything fly the nest unless it's a perfect day. But quite frankly, there's never normally really a perfect day. Anything to add on that, Ben?
No, I think you've nailed it. I think it's like, it's not the same sort of point that you're trying to get across, but it's sort of semi-relevant, where I kind of love the saying, it's not really about the return on investment, i.e. the amount. It's generally about the return of investment. Like I'd rather, like you say, invest in something that's maybe less risky, lower return, that I can just get my money into now, than invest in something that's higher risk, higher return potentially, but you may be having to wait for that. So it's a slightly different angle on it. But I just do. I think I heard it first with Rod Turner actually and Adam Lawrence. It's about return of investment and actually getting your money back than it is actual return on investment. And I'd much prefer to have my money back than not have it at all.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, another phrase, a very a lender that we've worked with a few times. It's easy getting money out the door. It's difficult getting it back in. And I rescind to that. I suppose a relatable example for listeners, if they haven't quite caught on to that, is my dad owns 5 commercial units, and I think they're underlet by 40%. And I keep telling him this, and he says, "Well, I haven't had a void in 20 years." And his mentality is, if they're constantly let, all 5 of them, because they know they're getting a good deal, there's never a point where he's fighting for high rents or market rents, and then he has a void for 6 months, because commercial lets can be vacant for that long. And it's almost like the tenants don't want to leave because they think they got the best deal in Henley. And my dad thinks he's got the best deal in Henley because he's never had a month when none of those units are paying rent. So it's sort of looking at the coin slightly different. And I think the reason that I brought it up is just to make everyone think a little bit, because it's all well and good chasing the high margin deals and keeping your money in the bank. But then when 2 years has passed and those high margin deals didn't come off because, they are more difficult to come off, would it have been a bit more difficult to split that and have a slightly different strategy for half the pot and the rest of the pot?
Very good. From a Q&A perspective, do drop some any comments that you've got down below. We'll try and get onto them. We didn't have anything to run through, or we did have something to run through this week, but I completely forgot to do it in the chaos of business and delivering lots of schemes. But we'll come on to that next week, if not the week after. But yeah, if there's nothing else from you, Jack, we'll probably
all good from me.
Leave it there. So thanks for tuning into the Property Expert Podcast. We're here every Friday at 5 p.m. You can follow us over at YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But until next Friday, catch you later. Have a good weekend.